What's good, guys? In today's video we're going to be building a full-featured app using Airtable. And so while you can use other storage methods such as local storage or Firebase Firestore, you can also use third-party such as Airtable. And so this is going to be a full-featured app, and you're going to learn how to connect to Airtable, how to use APIs, and how to build a fully featured app using an Airtable backend. Now, if you are interested in viewing and/or cloning this specific app that I'm about to build, you can do so on my Patreon page. On my Patreon page, you will be able to find all the apps that I've built on this channel. You're going to have access to live streams, and you will be supporting my work and helping out the channel. And so your support is greatly appreciated. Having said that, let's get started. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to get movie information. So I actually went out and I searched and I found a movie database. And this is a spreadsheet that shows you top grossing movies between 2007 and 2011. So we have a bunch of movies here. And what I decided to do is I went into my Airtable here and I created a table. And I went ahead and I basically got all this data here. I imported it here by going here, add or import, and then I went to paste table data and I basically pasted the data that we have. Now I added an image field here that has the image of the movie because it wasn't in the original data set, and that way we can have a nice image displayed inside the app. And the other thing that I did is I added a row that shows the ID. And the way you add this row is that you can simply right click, do insert left or insert right, and you can simply add this field here. You will have to make this field as a formula, and then you can just enter record_ID film, okay, which is the row that we're in right now. And it's going to give you this unique row ID that exists in all the rows when it comes to Airtable. And this is going to be super useful for us when we're going to be building the app. All right. So once you have this here, once you have your data set here, the next thing you guys need to do is you need to understand how the API stuff works, right? So if you go to api.airtable.com right here, you're going to have this documentation here, REST API. After you've created and configured the schema of your Airtable base, your Airtable base will provide its own API to create, read, update, and destroy records. So this is very, very useful to us because we can do a lot of things. And so if I go into movie database, which is my database here, there's whole documentation here, right? And typically, what you want to pay attention to is authentication here, right? You need to pass your API key, which is, I'm going to show you in a second where to find it. So you need to do that. And then you need to go into the movies table and you can learn, okay, we're interested in listing records, and that's about it, right? And also fields, right? We want to specify the fields because by default, there are no fields specified. And so you have to specify the fields. And so listing record, this is the API call. This is the authorization here with your API key. And this is the data you're going to be getting back. And so in order to get your API key, you simply go to airtable.com. You log in into your account. You click on your account right here and you go into account, okay? And here you're going to have all this information. This is your API key right here. Okay, I can even show it to you, because I'm going to regenerate it later. So that is the API key. Okay, so once you have your database, you have your API key, now it's time to test out the request. Now, this is an optional step, but I highly recommend it. I use an app called PAW, which is a Mac app, and I use it all the time. I need to test API requests, okay? So this is the first API request here, and this is kind of how it looks like. Right here, this is the preview, and what we're doing is we're passing a bunch of parameters. I'm saying max records 15 because I have a lot of records there, and I'm only interested in like 15 records. The view is the grid view because this is a grid view right here. This is the view I want to get. You can have multiple views here, but I want to get data from specifically this view, this spreadsheet here. And then I specify the fields, and I basically specify all the fields here, right? Film, ID, image, genre, lead studio, etc., etc. These are good fields because we can build a really nice app using these fields. Sometimes in different API providers, you don't need to specify the fields. It's automatic. But with Airtable, you need to explicitly specify the fields. And this is the data you're going to be getting back. And this is very, very useful because you want to see what the data looks like, okay? Because you want to understand, do you need to reformat the data? Do you need to change the data? This is very, very important to us, okay? And in this case, we're getting our records. And right away, I know that this is not going to be good for us because we just need to get this array. Essentially, we're getting back like a records, which is an object, right? An object that's a list of objects, but we are only interested in this list. So we'll have to make a couple of tweaks in FlutterFlow when we get into it in a second. All right, so that is what we have. We have enough in order to start building our UI and to build kind of the display and start kind of working with the app. We'll need to do a couple of more things later on because I want to have some interesting functionality that you're going to see. But right now, what we have is enough in order to go out and start building the app. And as I always say, start with data first. Always start with data first. All right, so let's go ahead and create a brand new app. I'm going to call it Airtable app. And we're going to create a brand new app. We're not going to do a Firebase, obviously. And let's go into pages here. And the way I envision this app is that it's going to have a main page, and it's also going to have a favorites page. So somebody can look at a movie and they can favorite it, they can unfavorite it, and they will be able to see all the movies that they favorited on the other page. All right, so let's go ahead and create a couple of pages. This is a nice page, but I want to create a page that's already built in. So we're going to be using a page from a template because I found some really good templates that are going to be perfect. So let's go in here. Let's just call it homepage 2. We're going to delete the other page later. And we are looking for a list, okay? And there's lots of options, right? There's lots of really good lists here. But there's one that I found that's going to be perfect to kind of what we're doing, okay? So how about this one right here? It's got this grid design they're going for. So let's go ahead and click on Use My Theme here. And now we have this, and this is perfect because we can display movies here, right here. We don't need this. We might even build a search field if we have some time, kind of the search functionality. But this is really, really nice, okay? So now I can delete the original page, and we can rename it to, and let's go ahead and add another page that's going to display movie information, the detail page, okay? So come here, let's go into lists. And let's go find a really good one, okay? So, actually, let's go into content. We're looking for a detail page. And let me show you a really nice page that I found. I found a really, really awesome page. Take a look at this page, movie details. Obviously, we're going to be using that page. Use my theme. We're going to call it movie details. Use my theme. Okay, and this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. We really couldn't have asked for more. All right, another page that we want to do, and this is going to be a duplicate of this home page, is the favorites page, because I want to show you a little bit of advanced functionality, how to do favorites. So we're going to come here. We're going to click on these 3 dots, say duplicate, and we're going to call it favorites. Okay, let's go rearrange it down. All right, so we got home page, movie details, and favorites. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a nav bar for easy navigation, okay? Because the idea is from the home page to movie details is going to be the same flow. So it's not going to be a nav bar. But favorites is going to be via nav bar, all right? So let's go ahead and create a nav bar here. We're going to say show this page on that nav bar. And home page is going to be on the nav bar right here. And let's come in here and let's make this nav bar. Let's make it a different color. Let's come here and let's make it white. And what do we have? White and blue. Yeah, that looks good to me. And let's change the icon on this. Which one is favorites? Let's make it a favorite icon. So something like this, like a heart, right? So that's kind of what we have. Let's have this favorites as well. And so we have the home page and we have the favorites page here, right? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to tie the data that we are getting so that, we have the data and we have the API request and we can start displaying. And the next thing we want to do is we want to go into API calls and create an API call, okay? The first call is going to get 15 movies. So not all the movies, we're just limiting it. We're going to get 15 movies. So we're going to create an API call and we're going to say get movies. Okay, it's a get request. Now, if you go to this API page, which is airtable.com/API, you can pick your workspace, your object, your table, and you can take a look at how the request should be. So if you go to the movies table, list records, this is kind of how it should be, except we're going to be passing a fields parameter. And so this is the parameter we're going to be passing, okay? We're passing max records 15, view, grid view, and fields is the fields that we have, okay? All the fields that we want. And we also need a header, which is our authentication header. So we're going to add a header, and I already have this header right here. And this is the header we're going to be passing with the API. This key is going to be different for each one of us, okay? So you can't use this key right here, okay? So I'm going to say add call, and we have it saved here. Let's go ahead and do a response and test. And this is very, very important part. So we're going to say test API, and we're getting all the records. We're getting 15 records. We have a 200 success. Now, we're not done yet. It's very, very important, guys, to do something called a JSON path, okay? Because the way it looks right now, it's not going to work. We need a list, but we're getting back an object, all right? So if we come here, we're going to go to recommended. And this is a new feature in FlutterFlow. They just released it. They're recommending various things where it says it's a list. And so what we want to get is we want to get this first one. Before, you had to do it by hand. Now they're recommending it to you. So we selected it, okay? So we can also preview it, and this is how it looks like. And this is exactly what we need. We do not want something to start with a curly braces. We want something to start with an angle bracket. So if you go to select it, this is kind of what we have. We're going to give it a name and say movie list. Okay, this is something we're going to be referring to it from time to time. So all of this is brand new functionality. I didn't see that like a month ago. So this is really, really nice. We're going to hit save. So once you've configured the data, the next thing you want to do is you want to populate the data on your page. And so what you want to do is you want to go to the high level. So in this case, this home page, this scaffolding page widget, and you want to execute your API call here. We're going to say get movies, confirm. Then you want to scroll down to the main widget that's going to display the elements. In this case, it's a wrap, called a wrap. And you want to configure this thing here called generate children from variable. We're going to say movies. This thing is going to be configured to get movies response, JSON body, JSON path. We need to configure a JSON path here, and we've already configured it. It's this movie list JSON path. So we're going to say confirm, confirm, and now it understands this is a list, and it's going to be able to generate the data. So let's go ahead and configure all this stuff here, set from variable, and you always want to be referring to movies item, never to get movies response. Movies item, JSON path, and here you want to do the JSON path, and the way you do it, we go back to our response. This is what we're working with right now. This is our record. You see it's inside fields, so we need to say fields and then the name of the field that we want, in this case image. So we're going to say fields image, okay, confirm. Product name is going to be the movie name. We're going to say movie item is going to be JSON path. And what is the movie name? Film. Okay, so film. And next we have this text right here. Now, even though this is a number field, we can possibly display something like worldwide gross here. So that's what I'm going to do right here. We're going to go to movies item, JSON path, fields. Okay, confirm. All right, let's go ahead and run this app, see if that works. All right, so here's our app, and it's displaying things nicely. We have the images, we have the name, and we have the worldwide gross here. Maybe we want to put something like how much it grossed as well, because it's not very clear, but nonetheless, it works. Let's go ahead and build a detail page for this real quick, because there's some interesting functionality in Airtable that you need to understand in order to properly have a detail page. All right, so let's go back to our app. We have the detail page right here. And so the way we're going to be doing is we're going to be passing a parameter to movie details. And in this case, it's going to be the ID, the row ID. And this is unique across all the rows in your sheet, in your database. And so we can essentially pull that row using another request and display all that data. So here's movie details. Let's go ahead and start building a link. So we have this image. We are going to do this container. We're going to say open, actually add action, navigation, navigate to movie details. And we're going to be passing a parameter. And the parameter is going to be called row ID or movie ID. Movie ID is going to be a string confirm. All right, so now we can pass it, okay? So what is that movie ID? Well, it's going to be from a variable, movies item, JSON path, and if you look at our response right here, that is why it's always useful to have this response here. It saves so much time. We see that it's not inside fields, it's outside the field, so it's just top level element here, okay? So we can just type ID, okay? Yeah, all lowercase. Confirm. Okay, so now it's going to pass ID to that page, and on this page, we need to issue a request to get details with that specific ID, okay? So we need to create another request. We're going to go back to API calls, and it's going to be a similar request. It's just the parameters are going to be different. And let me show you what we need to do. If we go to our APIs, we are going to be filtering, right? So if you go into retrieve a record, you have some filtering information, list records, yeah. So you have filter by formula, okay? And here's where you can have like a really as elaborate formula as you want that specifies which fields, which rows you want to get. So you can have a negative filter, a positive filter, and actually Airtable has this really nice kind of formula stuff. And these are the formulas you use inside Airtable, and you can also use them as filters via the API as well. So there are lots and lots of filters here, but the filter that we want is actually very, very simple. The filter we want is just ID equal to that. That is the filter we want, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our app, and we're going to duplicate this thing. We're going to duplicate this API call, and we're going to call it get movies filter, okay? And this is going to be useful once we're going to be building the favorites functionality, because that way we can just get the favorites also using a filter, okay? So what we need to do is we need to create a filter, and the filter works. We come here, it says filter by formula. And so if you come here, this is kind of what it looks like, right? Filter by formula, etc., etc. This is the format, and here's where you put the filter. Now this filter is obviously going to be dynamic because we don't know before, we build the app, what is going to be the ID of the person that wants to see movie details, okay? So it's going to be dynamic. And so the URL, the request is going to look something like this. Just filter by formula, and you're going to have the filter. We need to create a variable. If you put something surrounded by square brackets, that's a variable. So you need to add a variable here, and the name needs to match. So filter, we're going to say string, save, okay? And so now we need to specify this filter whenever we're going to be running this API call. Now remember, the filter API call expects a filter, and the filter needs to look like a very specific filter, ID equals etc. If we are doing here, right, if we are pulling in the query type, right, so if we're doing API call, get movies by filter, we set the additional variable here, filter equals to, we can't just specify the ID that we're being passed. We need to build that filter. We need to say ID equals etc., etc. So you guessed it. This is going to be a custom function. Okay, so we're going to create a custom function that takes the ID and returns the filter string. So we're going to say custom function, create new function, get filter, just get filter. And it's going to be taking in the return type is going to be string, false, and it's going to be getting a ID, the movie ID that we're passing. So this is going to be the movie ID. And string is less, we're going to say nullable to true just in case. It could be nullable. we're going to go to code. And all we need to do is return something a little bit longer that looks something like this. And that right there is from Airtable documentation. If you paste it like this, return, semicolon. And this thing is going to be the movie ID. And so what we want to do is we want to say if movie ID doesn't equal to null, we do that. And then we replace this with the movie ID like that. And so now we have a function. If it's not null, we are passing the filter. We're returning the filter. If it's null, then it's going to come here. We're just going to return an empty string. Okay, we need to check to make sure just in case. And it's not going to be null because the only way to get to the detail page is via the other page. But just in case, it's good practice. Now we can test it. This is very helpful for us. Let's go and test it out. So what is the movie ID? Let's say the movie ID is this. This is what we're going to be passing. If we run it here, let's see if it returns exactly what we want. So it runs that function, and this is what it returns. And that looks perfect to me. Okay, that looks exactly like a filter to me. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's say save. And now we need to pass that filter, and that's going to be from the parameter, right? The page parameter, confirm. Okay, so now this has the filter, and now it can execute the API call. Okay, so let's go ahead and populate this with various variables here. We're going to say network set from variable, and we're going to say we're going to be using the response this time because that's good enough. Response, JSON body, JSON path. And so if we run this request with just as a filter, filtering for one ID, this is what we're going to be getting back. Here's the response. And so as you can see, it's records. Again, it's an array. We can use that. It's fine for us, okay? All we need to do is say records 0, and then we can specify the fields. Let me show you. So we can say records 0, and then the name of the fields that we need. Fields, we can say fields, what is that, image, okay? And let's go ahead and see if that works. I'm going to say confirm. Let's see if it loads properly with everything that we're doing, okay? So let's compile our custom functions here. All right, so we got it compiled. Let's go ahead and run this and see if that works. Let's start a new test session. All right, so here's the app. Let's go ahead and see if that works. All right, so as you can see, it loads up the image. So it basically passed the ID there, and it made another request with the image. So now we can populate everything else, okay? Add to favorites is perfect for us as well. So let's go ahead and populate everything else. Now that that one field works, this is going to be a, let me copy this. It's gonna make it easier, copy that. We're gonna say, this is get response. We're gonna say JSON body, JSON path. This is custom. And this is fields image. I think it should be film, if I remember correctly. Film, do we have the year? Do we have the year? We have the year, perfect. How nice is that? Come here, get movies response, JSON body, JSON path, custom, year. And we have the rating. How cool is this? We have everything. Get movies, JSON body, JSON path, and we have the rating. And what is the rating called? Go back, Rotten Tomatoes, okay? Let's replace that Rotten Tomatoes, confirm. Well, this is actually, that was IMDb. Actually, I think, yeah, that should be Rotten Tomatoes. So let's go ahead. Let's come here. That is Rotten Tomatoes. JSON body, JSON path. Okay, Rotten Tomatoes. All right, confirm. And we don't have fields for these, so I'm just going to leave them as is. Genre, I think we have genre, if I'm not mistaken. We have genre. How awesome is this? We almost have everything. Response, JSON body, JSON path, custom, genre, confirm. And now we have the button add to favorites, which is what I want to do. And so before we start implementing that, let's go ahead and test if everything shows up here properly, because there's a lot of things we added. Let's reload our test environment. All right, let's click on Youth in Revolt. All right, so it looks like we're not seeing any errors. I know it's 2010, 68 Rotten Tomato. Let's go back. So Youth in Revolt, yeah, 68, 2010. Okay, so looks like it's working. And we have now the listing. we have the detail. Let's start working on add to favorites, okay? Because that's a very powerful feature, and it's not a straightforward thing that you can implement. So let me show you how that's done. So the way we're going to be storing our favorites is we're going to be using a local state, and this is going to be called favorites, okay? This is going to be a list of strings, basically the IDs, right? So everything is by that movie ID, so it makes sense to kind of use that. And so if they click, if they go, we're in the detail page, what we want to do is if they click, we want to add an action, and it's going to say update local state. We're going to say favorites, and we're going to say add to list from variable, and the variable is going to be movie ID, which is the variable that we passed from the other page. So they can add it here. But I also want to do something different. I want to do it on the home page as well. I want to have a little heart here that they can click on it, and it's going to add to their favorites. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is an image. I'm going to wrap this inside a stack. I'm going to say wrap widget inside a stack, and that way we can have another widget on top of it, right? Like as a layer. Okay. So I'm going to add a button, icon button. And we are going to call this, we're going to have icon is going to be favorites. So this means that they favored it. This means that they didn't. It's not their favorite. So by default, this is what we're going to be showing. And then once they click it, it's going to be showing this. All right. So let's go ahead and display, well, it doesn't matter because we're going to have two. And depending on if it's favorite or not, it's going to get displayed. So I'm going to duplicate this. We're going to have two icons, but they're not going to be showing at the same time. And actually, we need to expand this image. Let's expand this image. Okay, that looks better. And let's align this icon to the top right. Something like that. Was that 0.9? How does that look? A little bit more. 0.9, about 1. That looks pretty good. And same thing for this one. Okay. Now we are going to have conditions, meaning that if it's favored, it's going to have this filled. It's going to be filled in. If it's not, it's not going to be filled in. So we're going to change it. This is not favored. And let's make it a different color. Icon color, let's make it nice and red. Okay. And let's make that other icon nice and red. It might not be the same color, but you guys understand. You guys get the point. All right. So now we're going to set conditional visibility. Okay. So here's how it's going to work. This icon here is going to be displayed only if it's favorite. So let's come in here and let's create a condition, conditional visibility. And what we're going to do is we're not going to select condition. We are going to go to local state, favorites. We're going to say list contains item. And which item? Well, the ID. And the ID is movies item, JSON path, and this is going to be the ID. Okay. Now we hit confirm, and it checks if that ID is inside our local store, our favorites. Okay. So that is the only reason it's going to be displayed if it's actually favorite. If it's not, this is what's going to get displayed. Now we need a reverse condition for this one, right? So we're going to come here. We're going to say local state, favorites, list contains item, movies, JSON path, ID. Confirm, confirm. But we need a opposite statement. This is very, very useful. Otherwise, it would have been just a pain. So now this thing is going to be displayed. So I'm going to rename it to favorite. And this thing is not favorite. So this thing is that full with the fill. This one is just with no fill. Okay. So that's how it's going to be. And right now, nothing is favorite. So that means they should all be without the fill, just, with the line around it. All right. Just like that. So let's go ahead and reload this environment. See if that works. All right. Perfect. So as you can see, it's all of these not favored. So now we need to create a workflow to favor these, right? To make sure that if they click on it, it's going to get favored. Okay. So if they click on favorite, it's going to unfavor it. If they click on not favorite, it's gonna make it favorite. So let's go ahead and do not favorite. Let's do that. Add an action, update local state. We're gonna say favorites, add to list from variable, movies item, actually JSON path ID. So here is it adds it, and this thing removes it, unfavorites it. Add action, update local state, favorites, remove from list, from variable, movies item, path ID. And so let's see if that works. It should be instantaneous. All right, so let's click on it and look at that. It fills it in. And the only thing is that that field is not persisting. So if we reload the app, these the favorites will be deleted and it's gonna start from not favorite. And so this is fine for this tutorial, but if you want to build a real app, you want to make it persistent. All right, so that works. Let's go ahead to on movie details and let's make this button conditional depending on what's going on, right? So if you come in here, there's the button right here, and let's go ahead and create another button, make it a duplicate, just keep things very simple. And this thing is only going to be displayed if it's not favored. So we're going to come in here, conditional visibility, local state is list contains. So this is not favorite, right? We're going to say list contains opposite, right? So it's not favorite means it's not in the list, confirm. And this thing is going to have conditional visibility where movie ID, local state, favorites, contains item, movie ID, confirm. And then we're going to rename this, right? So this is going to say something like, okay, remove from favorites. And yeah, that's fine. Maybe change the color of the button. Let's make it maybe red because we're removing. Okay, so something like this. Let's reload. All right, so none of these are favorite. Let's favorite this. Go here, and what does it say? Remove from favorites. We click that. We need to refresh it, right? So if we go back, it's no longer favorite. We just need to refresh it. So let's go ahead and refresh it. Let's do that, and let's do a navigate to movie details, pass movie ID, so that the state is there. Open flow editor, navigate to movie details, pass their ID, state is there, and now it's gonna know everything what's happening. Okay, so if you run it again, so let's come in here, add to favorites, remove from favorites, right? Yeah, this should be remove from list, movie ID. So if you run it, all right, so we have this, add to favorites, remove from favorites, add to favorites. So we have that. The only thing that we want to do is this thing here, we want to do instant. So if it's instant, it's very, very quick. Instant, instant. All right. So now if you run it, all right, so we have this, add to favorite, remove from favorite, add to favorite, remove from favorite. All right, so there's that. The last thing I want to do is I want to create a separate page that only lists the favorites. And that is a little bit more involved than you think, but it is good functionality because on that page you can add, remove favorites, and add will and stuff like that. So let me show you how that is done. So we have this favorite page, but what I want to do is I want to delete this page and I want to reuse this page because this page has a lot of things that, you know, has all the functionality that we want on this page. So because we've been building this page, it doesn't make sense to kind of rebuild it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it and I'm going to rebuild it. Okay, I'm going to say duplicate and I'm going to call this favorites. Okay, now let's change the default active icon, favorites. So I'll make it maybe app bar icon. All right, so now we have that. It's not the default. We have the movie details, except here we need to execute a special query that only specifies our favorites. Okay, so remember how we were executing a special query that has that movie ID for this page? Well, we have to do the same thing, except we have to specify many movie IDs, basically all the favorites. So the way this is going to work is we're going to go on favorites here. This API call, we're going to do get movies filter. Okay, so if we edit this API call, it has a filter, and the filter is we're building this filter via a function. Okay, so we already have a custom function that generates a filter from one movie ID. But now we have multiple movie IDs stored in local store, and we need to generate a long function. Okay, so that's going to be a little bit different. So let me show you how that works. We're going to create a new custom function. We're going to say get filter multiple. And ideally, you can have just one function that does that. So we can modify the other function to do that. But I'm just going to create two functions just to simplify things. And this function is going to take a list instead of a string, and it's going to return a string. Okay, so it's going to take it's going to return a string, correct? It's going to return a string, and it's going to take a list. So this is going to be a list of favorites. Okay, and data type is list true. Nullable, yeah, we can say true, that's fine. List of favorites. So it's going to take a list, and it's going to return just a string. So we're going to come back here. And so what this function does, it takes a list of IDs, favorite IDs that we have stored in local store, and it returns a function that looks something like this. It has this OR, and then it has a parentheses, and then inside the parentheses we have ID equals that, comma, ID equals this, and this is straight from Airtable documentation. So if you search for OR, you will be able to see it right here. So you have OR, and it says or this or that. This is a way to specify multiple fields or, and basically we're doing a filter that says get the data where is this field matches, that field matches, so or that field or this field or that field. So if you have 10 fields, it's going to give you 10 records. It's going to go out and find them. So this is a very powerful query at Airtable, okay, that you can use there, right? So let's go back to our app. We have this function, and it's going to be returning to us a filter. So we're going to save. We're going to go back here, and this is our favorites. Okay, just to make sure, we're going to say get movies filter, and we're going to set another variable. This is going to be the filter, and we are going to be from variable. We're going to be using our custom function get filter multiple, and list of favorites is going to be our local store, local state. Keep mixing it up. Same thing. Local state, that's it, confirm, confirm. And so now whatever is in the local state, it's going to build a filter, and it's going to return it. So let's go ahead and try this out. Let's check that function. All right, let's go back. Let's reload our environment. All right, so this is our front page. Let's go ahead and favorite some of them. Let's say I favorite these three. I go into my favorites tab, and I see these three because it executed a filter to get just these three from the local store. And so if I unfavorite any one of this, let's say this one, it disappears because it automatically knows that it's no longer valid anymore. I can do that, it disappears. And now all we have this, I can do that and disappears. And if I go back, none of these are favorites. So if I favorite these four here, I see these four. I unfavorite when in Rome, it's not favorite anymore, right? Because it refreshes and it understands that favorite ID is no longer in local store. And that is why this thing is not set, and that is why this thing is not set. So that is how you do favorites. Of course, we need to add a row to say favorites. There's a couple of other things that we want to do, maybe do some search functionality and all that, but I actually did search functionality in one of the previous videos, so you can check that out. So I see no reason to kind of do it again. If you have any questions or issues, let me know in the comments and I'll do it again. But that is the app that we have, right? We have details here. We can remove it from favorites. We can go back. We can look at our favorites in the list. Lots of interesting things. And all of this data is stored nicely in Airtable. All right. So if you want to go down this route, which is very, very nice, very easy to store all this data, you can go down this route if you want. My job is to give you options. And if you're interested in viewing and or cloning this specific app, as well as all the other apps that I built on this channel, and get access to live streams and other content that I'm going to be putting out there, definitely check out my Patreon page. It's a good way to support the channel, and a big shout out to all the existing patrons. Thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot, and look forward to more content on the Patreon page. And you can join the community using the link in the description.